Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, welcome to today's podcast, Jay. We've got some juicy nuggets and brutally honest tips for our topic today. So let's get to 7 brutally honest marketing tips your competitors don't want you to know. So first off, why do we care about our competitors? Why should we care about what our competitors are doing? Is this just FOMO or?
Well, I guess, my perspective on this is that I do feel like it's important for us to be watching competitors, either for our brand or our clients' brands, because you never want to feel like you're just copying the world. But I also recommend that you're not leveraging it to come up with all your ideas. So my perspective would be is looking closely at competitors and kind of zig when they zag.
And I also like that they've experimented before or maybe after you've thought of something, and you can use their experience to say, ooh, how did that land with our sort of collective audience, I guess? So the first tip we've got is why you should stop paying for leads you will never convert. And really, I think this talks a lot to where your budget is going. And so we've had clients where they've wanted to just target everyone, and so, why is it that they should care about not converting everyone or trying to target everyone?
So I have a ton of thoughts on this topic. So backing up a second here, I think, again, it's all really about working off of your goals. And so, again, I think a lot of times business executives have, that, FOMO mindset of we want to speak with every single person possible because you never know what's going to turn into revenue. The challenge is from a sale, I guess let's look at it from each department point of view. From a sales department perspective, there is an element of having, confidence. And if you get sent a gazillion leads and one, you can't get to those leads fast enough, which that alone could kill the opportunity. But two, if you get a bunch of leads from what I would call irrelevant or not qualified ideal clients, it's really hard to convince those people of why your offering is the right solution for them if they aren't, farther down the funnel. And so I think from the conference perspective, and from a scale point of view, it would be smart to send the leads that not only you can convert, but you should convert. So I think that's important from a sales side. And then from the marketing side, obviously it's an area that we specialize in. Very few companies, really, if any, have unlimited budgets. And so the problem is that from a marketing department point of view, you want to make sure that every dollar you're investing is turning into, opportunities. And if you spread those budgets too thin, trying to attract everyone that's between, 0 and 100 plus years old, and or having, potentially a need for your offering, I think it's just going to basically waste a lot of money and time. And so I think from a marketing and sales perspective for both departments, it makes a lot of sense for you to be focusing on who's the ideal clients, having meaningful conversations with them, converting them, learning from them, and then expand based upon opportunities that you uncover.
Well, and then the other end of that too is servicing potentially those not ideal converts, that have turned into clients where your team may not be best set up to optimize and efficiently manage those accounts either, right? So, we read 10x is easier than 2x, and one of the biggest examples in there is, again, to your point, spreading yourself too thin. You're not able to fully concentrate the majority of your efforts in the right places, which can make, again, servicing those really hard, where you're just having to like recreate the wheel over and over again. So from the get-go, it's bad. And then at the end, it's bad.
I totally agree. And I think, back to your competitor comment you had about 10 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago, actually, this is an area that I think could be really, really beneficial on doing the competitive analysis. Because if you go to a competitor's brand, like looking at Google reviews or whatever, wherever they're investing energy in, and you're reading the comments and feedback, especially the negative ones from their customers, you can learn a lot about why they aren't doing a good job in servicing those people. And so I think from a competitor point of view, to give you the confidence that it's better to have focus and not spread yourself too thin, again, on the marketing and the sales side, that alone could be a really powerful way of looking at the competitor data to help you make smart decisions.
I like that. All right. So then, speaking of data, nice segue into
I
it's,
try.
data is useless if you don't use it. So, uh, if you don't measure it, it doesn't matter. And so, why do we care about gathering data? I mean, obviously, there's a lot that ties into what kind of data and what KPIs matter. And sure, there's a whole nother podcast on that. But why is it that we should use that data?
Well, I think again here, we always heard, we hear often in our world the, garbage in, garbage out. And so again here, I think, before you are launching any kind of marketing or sales efforts, to your point there a minute ago, you want to go into it eyes wide open, knowing what metrics you're trying to measure, and what's important. Because again here, if the metrics are vanity, like X number of visits of my website a day, that's really not a valuable metric to look at closely because it's not making a difference if you get a bunch of traffic to your site and those people aren't saying, or raising their hands saying, I'm interested in what you have to offer. And so I would suggest that again, when you go back into my first comment about, working backwards off your goals, you want to understand exactly the gaps you have in your current business against the goals you're trying to achieve for that given time frame, and then decide and determine based upon current processes and procedures and messaging and whatnot, what you need and what activities are needed to generate the right results. And then learning from that. So when you go into it, let's say, for example, you need 5 leads a week based upon your assumptions that that's what's going to help you generate the goals. And if after 30 days, you're finding that those 5 leads actually aren't generating the results for you, before you go and blame marketing on not getting you the right opportunities, there might be other areas of your business that need to be looked at. So again, you want to look at the entire funnel, everything from generating awareness from a potential new clients, and then how you are onboarding and servicing those people. Because the problem you might have on the data side is less about number of leads you've acquired and more about how you're providing services, support, nurturing those current or prospective clients. So again, the data is going to be useless if you don't look at it the right way.
I mean, how many times have you and I filled out forms to get services and we've never gotten a reply? I mean, that would
Oh, it's
be
the
really
worst.
hard to blame marketing on that. Well, and to the other side, as a huge fact finder, I almost found myself wanting to disagree with you on your approach because I'm like, give me all the information and then I'll figure out the story. But I like the idea of focusing because we can go into analysis paralysis with data all day, every day. I mean, there are marketers that that's their job. But if you kind of find like where is the company supposed to be going and what can create a really impactful lead flow pipeline, then you can measure that versus let's just measure again website visits and how many of them are clicking on pages and what pages matter and then is that blog important and you could go into like a rabbit hole of data. But the most important piece that you said was using it. And I think remembering it's an iterative process, you're not going to figure out the perfect metrics and they're going to matter forever and ever. At at the least, you should be reviewing those every quarter, especially if you run on like EOS, looking at your success metrics and your scorecard every single quarter and making sure that, yes, these still matter. I'm creating issues out of these pieces of data and then I'm making changes with the insights that I've gotten. So I think
Yeah,
that's a really
totally agree.
important tip. Hmm.
Exactly.
So the next one is data will continue to feed AI. And the joke is that AI won't replace you, but it will humiliate you if you use it incorrectly. So how do we blend using AI and all this data and information we've got with the human touch? And it's something our agency is really focused on this next year is that human touch piece. But how do you kind of embrace AI just enough?
So the way I've been looking at it more recently is AI is a tool. And it's similar to using a tool like HubSpot for your CRM or WordPress for managing your website or Google Analytics, GA4 for, analytical performance. I think just thinking about it from a perspective of AI is going to allow me to get rid of humans, I think it's a wrong way to look at it. Instead, my mindset is how can you leverage AI to take what you're currently doing and leveling it up and also freeing up time for you to do more meaningful things that really do require humans. And the approach that we often take is kind of a human first mindset, and then leveraging AI to help, create ideas, analyze what you're planning on communicating or marketing, and looking for ways to improve that. But that's really where I think a lot of companies, that rely too heavily on AI and automation will often fail. I mean, at the end of the day, people want to buy from people. And I think right now, and again, it's getting better and better as we see every single week. But if you just say, okay, I'm going to get rid of my marketing or sales team and I'm just going to rely on, ChatGPT to do all of their stuff, you're going to get out data that's often or information or recommendations that's just going to sound very robotic and cold. And I think people are starting to get really smart to that, where it's, there's a lot of common buzzwords that AI will constantly spit out, like in conclusion, and those kind of words that, is becoming really obvious that it just sounds like, an AI system did the job. And I think that the recipient on the other side is going to feel like maybe you don't care. And so our recommendation would be is just making sure that you're putting yourself in the shoes of the person that's going to be receiving the messaging and say, well, how would you feel about this? And is there a way for you to make it feel more personalized? So that way the person gets it and feels like you really care about, their, pain points or motivations. So that's really where I guess my mindset is that if you rely too heavily on it, from the wrong point of view about maybe just cutting labor cost, I think you're missing the bigger opportunity.
Well, and it is just a tool, and just like any other tool, you have to know how to use it. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of our organization for doing over the last like year and a half is practicing using this tool. And again, we've seen all the telltale signs of a chat GPT, piece of content like in the world of, oh my gosh, does it have any other opening phrases? I don't know. But I've kind of started looking at tools like ChatGPT as an intern. It has just enough information, but it can only grow with the information you feed it. And that's where the gap is if people don't think about it like it is an imperfect system, it is going to spit out kind of a little bit of garbage, some very foundational basic. It's a basic system, but the more you use your brain to feed it, train it, teach it, then you can really optimize it and then kind of expand upon that by getting deeper into the topic that you're trying to potentially write about or strategize about. And I think that's the kind of fun part is there is so much information out there, but we're really just hitting the surface if you just take what it spits out and you're not putting your special secret sauce to it, then it's a tool spitting out a tool.
Yep, garbage in, garbage out. But I think again, you're back to the whole theme around the competitor side is, the AI. I like your idea of the intern concept, but it's also greater from the research point of view. Now, again, depending upon the version of AI and ChatGPT or whatever you're using is on, you might get different data. Some of the the free plans are using older data sets. But, from a competitor point of view, it's really interesting to have a tool like ChatGPT give you their perspective. Where the world is definitely headed is AI is becoming very mainstream. I mean, even my parents are leveraging it now, which blows my mind because they were uncomfortable with even using bill pay. until recently. But I think, again, if you use ChatGPT to kind of see not only what it perceives your competitors are doing, their messaging, their SWOT analysis, all that stuff, you also can then compare it against how it perceives your brand. And then from a, competitor, point of view, you could then leverage that again back to my zigzag kind of mindset is the AI systems can definitely help you make your life easier. And then as the various different platforms like Google and Bing and whatnot are leveraging AI to give people that, singular answer that they believe you want off that AI, the question through the AI systems, then there's the whole level of SEO you want to think about, is in how you optimizing your brand and differentiate yourself. So that way, when people are leveraging, ChatGPT to find a company that you provide the services for, it'd be obviously amazing if you are then found. So there's a lot of opportunities there from a competitor point of view, to kind of see how the data sets are perceiving that company and industry, and for figuring out opportunities that you could leverage.
I like that. All right, on to our fourth tip, which is EOS isn't a magic wand. And, for those who aren't familiar, EOS is the Entrepreneur Operating System, and it's a business operating system with some really great foundational pieces for some of those mid-market organizations that are maybe struggling to scale or have some gaps that they're just really struggling to uncover what the issue is behind the issue. So, why would we say that when it comes to your competition, EOS in and of itself isn't the magic wand?
I think again, similar to the AI side, from my point of view, is I'm a huge fan, obviously, of EOS. And there's other tools or platforms like Pinnacle and Scaling Up and Metronomics, and the list goes on and on and on. I do strongly believe in the value of that. It's obviously hard to tell if a competitor is using a system like that. But the part that I think is really exciting about a tool like, or a methodology, we'll call it, like EOS, is it's forcing you to kind of think about a different way of how you can be more remarkable. And so all those systems use like platforms like 90, where you're leveraging 90 for helping you implement your EOS strategy. And they have obviously the vision traction organizer. And one of the first things you do is you fill that out about, what makes you special, what's your secret sauce. And, again, here, if you just put in, the generic things like, for your values being, customer service, everyone says that kind of stuff. And now they expect that of you. And so I think from a competitor point of view, to avoid yourself feeling like you're in a hamster wheel and just spinning and spinning and spinning, again, back to the last thing on the AI side is you want to think about, how is that company telling their story and differentiating their brand, and then for you to figure out then how you can then surpass them. And the beauty of EOS is, if you have too many focus areas and goals and you're trying to accomplish too many things, regardless of how large your company is, you're likely going to fail. And so it's better to have, one focus area than having 10. And so that's why I love platforms, or systems like EOS, because it really helps you, if you're doing it right, it helps you think about, okay, here is my annual goals, back into the full circle on the whole metric side and the data side. You want to look at your 3 year goals and then your 1 year goals, and then break it down into quarterly goals and weekly goals, and so on and so forth. And so from a EOS point of view, it's allowing you to be like, okay, this year we want to accomplish X, and then you work backwards off of that, and that'll help you then come up with what the right metrics are that you want to focus on, and then giving you kind of like that true north of where you should be investing your time within your marketing department, your sales departments, and then differentiating and positioning your brand so you stand out from the competition.
Why do you think it is? Because we see this often where organizations running on EOS or business operating system typically really struggle with the marketing side of things. And my brain's been trying to come up with the reason why. Is it because a lot of EOS run organizations are coming to EOS because they're run by visionaries without a strong sort of integrator type of attitude or without an integrator. And so they don't really know how to blend something as can be ethereal in nature, marketing without the right plan in place. If you don't have the right strategy to then say, this will, get to this point with your goals. Maybe it's SQLs or leads or something else, but without that guidance from the vision of EOS, why is it that marketing seems to struggle or sort of be this offshoot piece of the business that doesn't really get the attention it deserves?
I mean, I freaking love this question. So EOS is an area that I'm personally very, very passionate about. I really do feel like we've been on it now for how many years? Seven,
Ooh,
nine? I have no idea.
six or seven, yeah.
Yeah, it's been definitely a couple years. And I really do feel like it's one of the areas of why we're doing as well as we are, especially from the efficiency and focus and alignment point of view. But I think, back to your question, over the last probably year, I've been investing a lot of time in talking with not only businesses, but also like EOS, coaches, facilitators, guides, whatever you want to call them. And I've been hearing, I guess to your point, a couple different things. So, for example, I had a call with an EOS coach about 2 weeks ago, and this exact question came up, and we were just talking it through. And in that situation, for one of their clients, one of the biggest reasons why marketing itself was being blamed for things not performing well is they had no one in that leadership team that understood marketing. And so what was
Hmm.
going on there is the visionary who was definitely passionate about marketing and saw the value in it didn't have that expertise on how to actually do it. He had no problem in giving a vision of like, "Ooh, I would love for us to get, more leads in this kind of situation or industry or geography, whatever the scenario was." But didn't understand, just by saying it, there's a lot of work that has to be done. And so, unfortunately, in that client situation, they had one marketing person on their team that was a Jack and Jill of all trades. And there was a huge gap between the visionary, the CEO, and that doer. And so I think when that client scenario is you need to have someone in the room that understands the value of marketing, but also how to do it. Like a chief marketing officer or a VP of marketing that could be a liaison between the visionary and the people doing the actual work. So that was a recent example that I just ran into where uh, they didn't really have that strategic visionary marketing leader in place to do it. That was one example. The second example is back to the FOMO, acronym, the fear of missed opportunities that we brought up now a couple times on this show. Is and again, I will be the first to admit that I've definitely have uh, been a victim of this, or maybe the one that's causing the pain. But there's just often you see so many opportunities and you don't take into effect or account that you have all these things you have to do on a daily basis just to run the company and do the day-to-day stuff. When you tackle on top of it, you know 10 different marketing thoughts or ideas, you're spreading yourself way too thin and you're going to fail. And so what would be smarter is to look at what are the gaps you have in either your marketing or sales or customer service side. Pick 1 to 3 maximum goals for the year and then work backwards off of that. And I feel like again the combination of having an experienced marketing leader that's overseeing all of that and could give clarity and pushback where it's just becoming too cumbersome. And then the second part is just having clear focus areas of what you're going to be doing. So again, you don't spread yourself too thin. I think those are the two areas that I'm seeing consistently happening where people just dump into an EOS system too many rocks because they feel like marketing is the reason why they aren't hitting their goals. And often what we're finding is that yes, marketing is definitely one of the opportunities or obstacles, however you want to look at that, glass half full, glass half empty. But typically it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more tied to other departments and just trying to do biting off too much more than you can chew.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth.
Are you gonna use the elephant analogy now? I know you
No, no,
love
no,
that
no.
one.
I have nothing else to add. That was great. I mean, we'll do a whole nother podcast on this, but the next thing I want to talk about is we talked a bit about data and garbage in, garbage out, and sort of analysis paralysis on measuring 100 million things that ultimately, why are you measuring them? So one of the terms we've heard quite a bit is a vanity metric. First of all, like, give me an example of a vanity metric that you actually care about, but you know it's a vanity metric.
Wow, that's a really good question. Um, so I'm over it now. But back when Google Analytics had the, version 3 verse 4, I don't know why, but I found myself going down significant rabbit holes around bounce rate. Um,
Mm.
and so for those that aren't familiar with it, bounce rate, and it definitely is changing now. It's more of an engagement rate now with GA4, the newest version of Google Analytics. But bounce rate is an area that is one of those metrics that, for whatever reason, gets both a visionary CEO and then also marketers bent out of shape. And what it basically means is essentially is if someone comes to your website and visits a page, and that page has a very high bounce rate, it implies that that person then came to that page and didn't find value and left. And so if you see a bounce rate like 98% for a page, it basically means that almost 100% of people visiting that page leave. But there's so many variables in play here. For example, we had a client that was really upset about how high the bounce rate was, and it was a landing page for a Google Ads campaign, and they called us freaking out because they're working with a past agency and they wanted to hire us. And, again, we did our due diligence and found that the issue really wasn't the marketing, it was how they were analyzing the bounce rate. That landing page had a form on it, and that form did not generate a new load of the page. So Google Analytics saw that that page had a very high bounce rate. And the client was so upset, and we made them realize this actually is a good thing because in that scenario, you weren't asked, the call to action wasn't going to a different page. It was, here's a page of all the information you're looking for. Now tell us you're interested and fill out a form. And so you actually wanted that page to have a high bounce rate. So I think this, bounce rate and time on site are probably hand in hand two metrics that I'm just finding less and less value in because there's just so many things out of your control. Combination of you driving people to a page or a website, and then also, search engines. Again, you can't control how Google decides to often, rank you for pages that, for keywords that you really weren't going after, but they had their own perception of what they felt like the content was about. So I think those are kind of things that I just find that when you're looking at all these numbers, and again, marketers are often the reason why this is a huge problem. I remember when I first got into this space and a client asked us to build a marketing dashboard, no exaggeration, we put every single metric on that. So it was a, 15-page dashboard of every metric you could think of. And the client literally was like, I have no freaking clue what story you're trying to tell me here. Just tell me, is this working or not? And let's move on. I don't want to spend hours going down a rabbit hole looking at a bunch of these random things that aren't very important. So that's why I just say it's like, pick the one, two, maximum three things that's really going to help you tell a story. Almost similar like a stoplight. If you're in your car and you're at a, red light, those three, colors, red, yellow, or green, are going to, in theory, give you a life or death situation. And so I'm not saying you need to be that extreme about your metrics, but you just ask yourself why. Like, why is it so important for you to look at it? And then if the numbers aren't where they need to be for this metric, regardless of it being a vanity or not, ask yourself, what are you going to do with this data? If bounce rate was an area that's important to you, and I say for you these 5 pages went from a 90% bounce rate to 92%, what are you going to do? Because you don't really understand exactly why it went up from 90 to 92. Is it seasonality? Did you change your campaign? Are you listed on some random website now that's driving your relevant traffic? There's just a lot of variables in play here. So I just would recommend, don't have analysis paralysis. As long as you're having meaningful conversations with the ideal clients that would benefit from your services or your products, that's what's more important than all these random things to look at.
And I'd say this is almost probably one area in which I'd recommend it's okay to look at your competitors to see what they're measuring, or, if you can get a sense of it. Maybe, and some people know them, know their competitors in their space. They meet them at conferences and they're friendly. But this is probably one of those areas in which I'd say just take it with a grain of salt, if anything at all. Just know that if you're trying to make a difference, measuring what matters, then the vanity metrics are just that. They're just vanity metrics. So if you just pick a couple of really important things, measure them, learn from them, iterate, then let the vanity metrics be the shiny object that they are, which I think a lot of visionaries can get caught up in is the shiny object, or like, I think this is really important. And then when you have to dig down and ask them the question, well, why do you care so much about this? Well, ultimately, it's something else. It's like a symptom of a larger disease, or, something they just feel like they're not getting control over. And so they just want to try to measure everything else around it to see, how can I try to control this situation? Like, I'm not getting a full pipeline, like my SQLs, my sales qualified leads are just tanking and I don't know why. And there are people like getting that integrator partnership in an EOS, system is where that really can benefit someone like a visionary looking at vanity metrics. And then ultimately they're driving their team crazy by measuring 100 different things, but nobody knows why. So a vanity metric, I guess, just needs to be evaluated whether this is going to provide any real tangible support down the line or not. Then if not, then it's a vanity metric. Move on.
Well, I think on that, it's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking back about the competitor side. Luckily, it has changed a ton, but I've been really big in SEO, so the organic search engine optimization space for I've been doing this now for over 25 years now. One of the vanity metrics that was a big one, probably 8+ years ago, was keywords. How many total keywords is your competitor getting ranked for? And then we've had numerous clients come to us saying, here's a report we got from our past agency. Our competitors, have 4,800 keywords they're getting ranked for. We're only getting ranked for 120. Get us to, 5,000 tomorrow. And I'd be like, oh my goodness. And so again, they're trying to focus on strategy first, human first mindset is let's first talk with your clients before you just start going after whatever your competitors you think are doing better than you. Let's figure out exactly what's going to make a difference. And you might find that a lot of these keywords that they're going after might sound great in theory, but none of your ideal clients are searching that way. So your competitors might be investing and spending thousands of hours and dollars on just trying to get those, number of keywords vanity metric to keep going up and up because maybe they're watching you as well and your other competitors. But what's more important is again the quality conversations. So our advice would be is focusing on the audience, what their pain points are, the areas you can really make a difference, and invest more energy in maybe 3 to 5 keywords versus 5,000. Because again, you might not have the time and resources in place to even do that. And even if you could, should you? And that's really the part that I think is really important about is don't let these vanity metrics from a competitor point of view uh, inspire you to do the wrong things. Our advice would be is I'm not saying walk too long for the marathon before you start running, but if you're just getting into this space now, it might be smart for you to kind of dip your toe in the water and figure out here what's going to work best for you before again you spread yourself and your team too thin.
Well, I kind of look at it like give marketing a job. And whenever you're writing a job description, one of the most important things candidates want to know is, how am I going to be judged successful or unsuccessful? And so marketing, I think, deserves something similar where it's this persona inside your organization and it has a job, but how will marketing know, give it an avatar, how will it know if it's successful or not? And so if you're trying to measure everything, well, I don't know how it would know to be successful. And so I think it's owed the same type of leverage in your business by knowing what are the things that I'm going to care about that will ultimately show me if my efforts are successful or not. And it's really the challenge, I think, is that it's different for every business. They're at different stages, they're in different growth cycles, maybe different economic challenges or labor challenges. So knowing like how to refine that pool of metrics is really critical. So, one of the six tips that we've got for today is safe marketing is dead marketing. And I think if I have to look at like the
Wow.
most recent example is Jaguar.
Oh
They
no.
really were like I would say it was very
Copy nothing.
unsafe. Yeah, yeah. They really shook it up, and actually, there was another article or advertisement that there all these old ones are coming back to the fold. And one of the things my grandpa used to say when he ran his ad agency that my mother and I still talk about to this day is even if it was a bad ad, you're still talking about it. Bad advertising is just advertising. So, yes, he was doing this a lot longer ago than we are today. But, there is something to be said about being bold and putting yourself out there a little bit. And I know you and I struggled with this several years ago where we ended up sort of sounding like everybody else because we wanted to be safe. And that's what we thought clients were looking for. But there is something to be bold about in your business that kind of shows that you've got a little bit of that chutzpah, that little, I can do this and I'm gonna share something a little different than everyone else because to your point, humans are buying from other humans and being bold and not sounding like everyone else and being this gray bleh, is is really going to help move the needle in terms of your marketing success.
Yeah, so I think this is an easier one to say and than to do sometimes. So I think I want to be clear from my point of view. I don't think when we're talking about bold, it has to be doing what Jaguar just did. Again, you're right. I mean, in theory, no bad PR. Any PR is good PR kind of stuff. But I think the kind of clients that we support with, they do worry about this, and I respect that. It's like they don't want to damage their brand, especially if they've had the business for 20, 30 years, and there's a history and story behind it. But I think for me, that's the part that I get more excited about is that it makes me actually honestly a little sad sometimes. I'll meet. It actually this happened with one of our clients many years ago. They're a manufacturing firm. Our meeting with them was, talking about this exact topic. One of our first conversations with them, and you looked at their website and their brand and compared it to all their competitors, and to your point, they all sounded exactly the same. And we showed them, it's like, hey, just pop out your logo and stick your competitor's logo in, and no one will know the difference. And so the hard question we asked is, what does make you special? What's your secret sauce? What makes you remarkable? And unfortunately, they were like, we don't know. And part of it was fear. They were really worried that, it's in the digital world, it's a little scarier sometimes in the sales world is that if on the marketing side, you can't correct someone's perception of you, if they misunderstand what you're trying to say, they're gone and you're never going to hear from them again. And that's, I think, what caused a lot of fear in executives where it's like, what if they don't understand what we're trying to say? And so I think what I always try to communicate is your business has grown to a pretty impressive level, and there's a reason why. And I think if we can understand the story and the value that you're really bringing, and less about, product features and more about the benefit you're bringing to someone, I think it's powerful. And so in that example with that manufacturer client of ours, we had them walk us through their facility, and it was beyond impressive. When we said, okay, here's this one product you made for one of your clients. What do they use it for? And we heard this amazing story about how this is a life-saving, medical device, and how it's, for example, like on heart surgery, it's helping reduce, not only the person's ability to recover, but also from a cosmetic perspective, this scar going from being, 9+ inches to 2. It's like those are the kind of little things that I think is really special. So back to your question, I think from a competitor point of view, you obviously want to look at how they're positioning themselves. And then based upon your comfort level and what really makes you special around your company's culture and what you care about, that's what I recommend leaning into on the bold side. It's like if your ideal, for example, like in the agency world, if the ideal client for us really does enjoy, breaking bread and, and having, a meal with one of us, we obviously want to make sure that we're showing that personality coming through so we aren't robotic and rigid. But you also don't want to go so extreme where we're doing what the old school agency world is and showing a bunch of our team members, drinking in the middle of the day around, a keg. And so I think you have to decide what your culture is and what you're excited about and believe in, balanced with what your ideal client would benefit from. And then you look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, if we decided to show more of our personality on our website, and God forbid someone comes to our site and is like, ooh, I don't feel comfortable the way these people portray themselves. If you are being bold and you are being honest with who you are and what you want to be, I think you should be okay with that. And we've decided that many, many years ago that if a very, very large company came to our business and felt maybe we were too boutique sounding and maybe too casual and not all about fancy reports and presentations that a lot of our ideal clients don't care about and they don't want to hire us, I'm 100% okay with that because I think it needs to be a win-win. And that's the part that I think should hopefully inspire companies when you're thinking about being bold and differentiating yourselves off your competitors. That's the area that I would lean into. As long as you're proud about it and okay with the idea that it's going to attract the kind of clients you want to work with, then I think you're good to go.
I love that. And I can appreciate too the challenges that our clients have to face with also sometimes it's not their decision. They're being guided by an executive level team or something, with a history and maybe there's other business units and it can be kind of complicated. I would also propose that bold can mean, being bold in the decisions that you make with who you're servicing and how you're communicating that. And a lot of, ourselves and our clients struggle with being so almost simple. And simple can also be bold, by saying, and I think you meant an agency that all they do is work with knitters and knitting devices and tools and like knitting supplies. That is super bold because that is a very narrow niche. And I think being bold has a lot of nuance to it, but it ultimately is what would set you apart from your competitors. And something as a competitor, I wouldn't want you to lean into it because then you're taking share away from me. So. Okay, our last one, which is the reason why I think marketing gets such a bad rap sometimes is the sales team. And the sales team also gets a bad rap. Like they're the bullies, and marketing is like, oh, but I'm just providing you leads, and you guys are so ungrateful. Well, I think that is a double-edged sword, and it's really now more than ever becoming more of a partnership because they need each other. Sales needs marketing, but marketing needs sales. They need them to talk to them and to feed it back to them. So stop playing the blame game. And I know you've been on both sides of the coin. So what's your perspective on the sales versus marketing, like constant struggle and headbutting?
Yeah, this honestly is a personal mission of mine. It has been, as you know, for a long time. Just the word verse makes me blood boil. Again here, I learned this many, many years ago when I first got in the marketing game, in the late 90s, working for a large computer company. I'll never forget, I had a meeting with the vice president of sales, and this was a large computer reseller. And he said to me, "Do you understand what your job is?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's to build, marketing ads and marketing copy and all the typical thing a marketer would say." And he's like, "You're so stupid, 100% wrong. Your only job is to help give my team opportunity. And until you realize that, you're gonna fail." And I was a little offended at first. But again, I was very young when this happened because I'm only 21 now, so
Oh,
this is many years ago. Um, but it really opened my eyes to, oh my God, if I could really understand that my whole mission is to help give my sales team the opportunities to help provide services to someone that could benefit from our product or service, that's where we're going to win. And so, what I've been preaching for a long time, and I'm starting to see it work. We have a bunch of clients now that we're working with where, we really focus on three main areas of a business: marketing, sales, and customer service. And the minute we could make all those three different departments work together versus blaming each other, we're already winning half the battle. And so back to your question, focusing first on the competitor side, what I do suggest, and I know that you and our team just did this with one of our clients, which I freaking love, is before you start blaming marketing or sales, you want to again look in the mirror and figure out, is there a bigger challenge that you need to address? But also, is it possible that it's less about the things you're doing in marketing and sales and more about your competitors are doing it better? And so what I would say is to give everyone some visibility to understand when your ideal customer has a choice of hiring you as a company or one of your zillion competitors, it'd be better for you to understand exactly what they're doing different than you, or maybe the same. And so I think step number one is you got to secret shop. And so I think, again, secret shop the competitors, in an ethical way, of course. I'm not recommending anything weird, but looking at their marketing and looking at their sales and just figuring out how they're doing what they're doing, and then seriously consider doing it on yourself. Because I think you're going to find that it might be a simple thing, like maybe the way your sales team members are talking with prospective clients. If everyone is doing it differently, that alone could be part of the problem because then you don't know exactly what you need to do to create a winning formula. And so I would say, again, look at the competitors, do some secret shopping on them and yourself. And then from back to your question on the marketing, and sales team side, I think if those departments especially could work together in sharing, information and data, they're going to help each other do a better job. So, for example, on the marketing team side, them leaning into having frequent conversations with the sales team and closing the loop, it'll make their job so much easier. So it's less about, protecting their butt because they're getting yelled at for leads not being good. Instead, maybe the leads aren't good. And so talking with the marketing team and finding out, hey, for example, what are the kind of questions or objections you're getting from a prospect? Ding, ding, ding. That now turns into a bunch of great content post opportunities. So the marketing team can learn a ton from the sales team on how to make their lives easier. And then on the sales team side, them leaning into the marketing team and communicating what their needs are. Like maybe the sales team has a challenge where they're not comfortable with the collateral and they don't really know who to go to and didn't even know that there's an opportunity possibly to improve it. So what if the sales team now proactively went to the marketing team and said, "Hey, really loved, that campaign you guys just launched on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. I had a thought, could this be a possibility? And once we get leads for that possibility, I'm really nervous though still that the collateral I have just won't align with that entire story. So can we work together on going after the kind of leads where we see opportunities, but also to arm us with the tools that we need to make it easier to convert those lead opportunities. So again, here I just think that we all got to stop doing the blame game, and then lean in as one team to figure out how we can work better together to share data.
it really is a symbiotic relationship, and marketing needs that feedback from sales. And there was a story I heard from a friend who their sales team had a couple individuals on it, but one in particular was really thriving. And they found out that this person had sort of created their own like sequences and, their own outreach and everything. And it was really super successful, but the rest of the team wasn't using it. And so then they found a way to make the rest of the team more aligned with their approach. And the example that you're sharing with the client that we supported in a sales enablement strategy was that secret shopper, where it was really surprising, I think, for a lot of the individuals working in this business to hear their competitors on the phone. And it was a really simple exercise that gave us so much information. And it wasn't dishonest in any way. It was really actually a legitimate question we had for the business. But we ended up getting some product cost numbers. The way they approached the call, for example, was fantastic. And when we ended the call, the business owner we were working with said, "Yeah, but if you've ever worked with them, you know they'll never show up on time, and your stuff will not be where you want it to be, and it'll be broken." And that's just my experience. And so critical to hear how these guys are probably just closing sales after sales after sales, but they're probably not retaining those clients because they're not like executing on an appropriate level in operations. And so understanding the entire life cycle from marketing, sales through operations, and then how you can keep that business going is just such a team effort. And I, to your point, also hate hearing the verses because you need each of them to function at an optimal level to keep your business growing and scaling.
And again, I think we've seen it. To your point, it's like we have a couple clients that really are doing a good job with this. I think again, it starts with the leadership team where, the whole leadership team is aligned. They understand that they only have so much time and resources in place. Again, back to the EOS comments, those companies are on systems like EOS, and they're being really smart about, okay, we did our annual planning. We know that we're not where we need to be. We now know what we need to do to address that. It's going to require, I don't know, 8 different things to do. Let's spread that over the year. If we've been in business for 20 plus years and we've had 20 plus years of doing it the wrong way, I don't understand why it's thought that we should just resolve all this in a quarter, let alone a month. And so I think again here, the biggest takeaway I wanted to share is when you're looking at closely at the competitors, and you're seeing them, at least perception wise, ahead of you, either in marketing or sales or customer service or whatever the department might be, just before you lose too much sleep worrying about that, is instead identify the opportunities and then build out a realistic plan of how you're gonna again zig when they zag. And that's really what I think that zigzag mindset is really what I want to recommend, but putting into a place where you're doing it in a reasonable fashion so you're not only burning out your team but also yourself and the leadership team. It's amazing how fast this can become toxic. Not that I want to end on a negative note, but I just do want to encourage everyone to be thinking about it that the competitive research side is a huge value add to identify where you're seeing some gaps. But don't feel like you have to resolve them overnight. Just spread it out over an appropriate period of time where you're at, and I think you'll have much better success in the next, quarter or year.
I love that. And again, you have to build momentum, right? It's not an overnight thing, but you tackle every quarter if you're consistent. It's just like working out or eating well. You don't just do it once a week and expect results. You have to do it consistently. I think this was an awesome episode, and we're looking forward to the next one. So thank you, Jay, and thanks everyone for tuning into the Revenue Rewired podcast. We'd love any questions, podcast at stringcaninteractive.com. And please follow us for more episodes and insights on how to move your business forward. All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Thanks,
Bye,
Jay.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us questions to podcast at stringcaninteractive.com, and please follow us for more episodes packed with insights to drive your business forward.